Thanks for coming out. I want to thank the Cherry City Derby Girls for cross-promoting with us and helping us get this going. I usually say a few things right after the movie finishes up because there are some pretty big differences between what happened in 2007 when we wrapped this and modern Derby. One of the main ones is the Women's Flat Track Derby Association has kind of unified the rules, and so there's sort of standardization there. There's not any fake fights anymore, I don't think. Like that was like the first game.
Only in Renegade.
In Renegade, right? You have a Renegade up here and down in Arizona. I think there's maybe one or two more.
There's
But
one
in Bend, yeah, primarily that's been dropped by the wayside. And but having said that, some people I guess could be under the impression that some of the games were rigged, and that was never the case in any of the games, even from day one. Even though they absolutely said we're gonna have a fight over here, they never determined the score. So I do think that's cool about modern Derby. And having spoken to some old school Derby guys, like they had a lot of the games back then were absolutely rigged. Like every single element of them was rigged. But did anybody have any questions about the film or about Derby in general? Nobody?
Did you have like a wicked badass time doing this?
It was pretty fun. I mean, hanging out for several years with a bunch of Derby gals. It's not too bad,
Did you
right?
sit there just now?
I just have nightmares and flashbacks. No, I got a Derby name in RollerCon, so I mean I was right there through all the thick and thin at the beginning, so I definitely consider myself a Derby gal.
What's your Derby name?
Bob Long. So, did anybody else have any questions?
Do you roller skate?
I used to speed skate when I was a kid, and I used to win a lot too, but I hadn't since I was in like junior high school. But I'm an old skateboarder, so. And I did film a little bit on wheels, and I only fell once. I saved the camera. I was like, did the sort of that kind of move, held the camera up, managed to get away with it. But that was the only time I did actually skate on during the Derby, and had to use the rentals. So, yeah.
So when you started this, I mean, there was no way you could have known that Derby was gonna be what it's become.
Absolutely. There was, in fact, Dan, Derby Dan, Devil Dan, Dan Francisco, he had come and gone by that point. And he had borrowed a bunch of money from bar owners around town and wasn't repaying them, and had, there's debates over where the money went. And so Derby had kind of a bad name at that point. A friend of mine, Warner Campbell, who's the producer on this, we knew some people that were involved with it, but we just kind of stumbled into a bar one night, and we were like, hey, is anybody filming this? And so we just started filming, but people were sort of, I guess, ragging on us. They're like, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. What are you're just, this isn't going anywhere. They're not even going to have a single game. And then they had a game, and we thought maybe that's our movie. And then we saw they were going to turn that into a season. We thought maybe that's our movie. And then by the time we finished the season, we saw the split was starting to happen. And we're like, okay, our whole movie is 20 minutes of our movie because we still got to film for 3 more years, which is the double-edged sword of this kind of filmmaking. Better to film for 3 years and get something than film for 3 years or a year and get nothing, I guess. So. Did anybody else have any questions? And we're on tour. If some of y'all weren't here earlier, Chad Holt right here and I, he's the subject of another documentary that I just finished called Total Badass. So we're driving around, got 4,200 miles in the car. We've got about 17 or 18 more days.
What's that documentary about?
It's about this guy Chad, who's an old friend of mine who prints magazines, been in various bands. He's kind of an icon of the Austin Underground, writes about Total Badass, yes. He writes about his exploits in a very candid and humorous way. His drug dealing, weed dealing, I don't want to imply, since you saw these motions earlier, these kinds of drugs, but it's just a really funny, kind of obnoxious.
You have one on you right now.
I think he's just got weed. So.
It's almost legal here.
Right. We got a little bit of swag, someone in Seattle gave us some kind bud, gave Chad some kind bud, that was nice. Yeah.
What did you learn about those ladies in Austin and Derby when did you learn that you didn't know when you started?
It's hard as hell to start a grassroots organization, whether it's Derby or anything else. There's another movie that I've referenced a few times in relation to this, Harlan County, USA, which is an old coal miners movie, and it becomes a union versus workers, and that's what this became. I think in hindsight, if the women or if the organization had a structure in place when everyone came to join it, and everyone knew their place, not their place as in I'm your boss or anything like that, but just like this is what you're getting into, this is what's expected of you, and this is what you should expect in return. If that was established before anything happened, I think a lot of the split and the rift and all the animosity could have been avoided. But because everyone created it together, nobody had any experience creating a group, an organization like that, and so they figured it out as they went. They tackled the problems as they came down the pike, and so by the time they tried to put a structure to it, some people felt left out, and that created a lot of the hostility. I think in hindsight, if the structure had been established earlier, that could have prevented the split. Would have made our movie not as compelling maybe, and I don't know if that's the best thing for Derby either. You know, we knew everything that this camp was doing, and we knew everything that this camp was doing, but it was not our place as the historians, just documenting this event to say anything. And that's why we had such access, because we didn't take information that we collected from one person and use it to create, emotions and provoke answers in another person. We just let it unfold, stayed back, tried to be as unobtrusive and as invisible as possible. But I think we get people that come in and say, this is like our environmental group, the same things. Like what happened here isn't exclusive to Derby. You could take Derby out of this movie, and it would still be just about this group of people that are really passionate about something they're going to work their asses off to make happen. And they get so emotional and caught up in it that, that fuels the fire of all the little fissures and cracks that were in the organization to begin with.
Did those guys end up bounding each other?
No, but we all wish they did, of course. People in Austin thought that we, the filmmakers, could make that happen. And so every time we'd go out, they're like, make it happen, make a fight to the death, winner takes all. We're like, yeah, we're down. You make it happen, we'll film it. But they weren't friendly towards one another until the movie came out. And then at the world premiere, they all came out. Everyone was in the movie, obviously. And so the theater manager put half here and half here, different leagues, which was really cool. I didn't know it at the time, but it was like, yay, boo, boo, yay. But afterwards, we had an after party. Everyone met at the after party, and it was pretty much a hug fest. I think a lot of the problem during the really hostile days is that everyone had such anger towards the other side, and they made assumptions. You make assumptions about your enemy that their sole motivation is to destroy you. And when you see up here that it's not, it's to protect what they thought was integral to their organization, and to do it the way they thought was important. And the same over here. And so once I think maybe that's part of what allowed them to bury the hatchet a bit. And just also, time had passed. People wanted to move on beyond that. Both leagues were having great attendance and consistent bouts, selling out. So they proved that Austin could hold 2 leagues, which no one thought of. Could hold 1, let alone 2, but they're both doing pretty good still. And now there's also 550 leagues now. Like that said, 150. There's 550 leagues now, last I heard. Did anybody else have any questions?
How much film did you end up with? I mean, hours?
550. So yeah, it covered about 4 years, and it was 550 hours. I watched about 425 of those hours personally, and a lot of the others were multiple cameras for the game, So I could just sort of fast forward and go, oh, there's a good hit, there's a good move. So yeah, post-production took a long time, just because of that mainly. But that's the problem with video, is it's cheap. You just keep shooting it. You're just like.
Did you see? It looked like I saw an evolution of equipment. Where they were
Well, a little, yeah. There was.
To speed skates to like no helmets to.
The first practice, they weren't wearing helmets. Sarah Luna, it's not in here. It's on one of the DVD extras. I point over there because I'm hawking DVDs later. But she had her front tooth busted out by Nancy, one of the CEOs. Like, accidental, of course, but that was the very first thing that we filmed. There's blood in her tooth, and she's talking, and spit's flying out, and we're just like, oh, God. And then, of course, there was a horrible leg break. That was later. But, yeah, I did shoot some Super 8 film in the beginning. I had a bunch of Super 8 film laying around, so just to create a sort of different aesthetic. And then we had one not as great camera that was replaced by a slightly better camera. So there was a technological evolution that went on there a little bit too.